Welcome, everyone, to the Town of Richmond Planning Commission. This is our meeting for April 3rd, 2024. And it looks like we have 5 planning commissioners out of the 6 that we have. So we have a quorum, so we'll be able to get going. And it looks like we have some guests, so welcome to everybody. We're going to start by reviewing. Hi, Bonnie. We're going to start by reviewing and adjusting the agenda so we can tell if anyone has any comments that are not related to the agenda. Are there any comments on the posted agenda?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
I think simply about the duration of the meeting tonight. I sent a note out to everybody on Friday, which was inappropriate.
Well, it's marginally inappropriate because it just has to do with scheduling. But anyway, you know, it's fine to be leery of it.
Okay. The gist of which was to request that we allow our meeting tonight to run overtime, so we didn't have to rush through our public engagement with Richmond Racial Equity or any other community members that might want to participate tonight. Also in the hopes that if we're making relevant progress on moving a motion regarding the zoning at Jolina Court, that we would have enough time to maybe get that done. If nobody objects.
Yeah, I would be fine as long as nobody has to leave right at 9 o'clock. You know, we're welcome to carry our meetings on longer than 9 o'clock. Sometimes people have to go right at 9 or whatever. So it's just putting it out there. It's a good thought, and we'll see how things go, shall we?
Okay.
Any other comments about the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we will carry on with the agenda as posted. And so we'll start with public comment on non-agenda items. I'm assuming that everyone has looked at the agenda. So if your comments are relative to anything that's on the agenda, we'll take them when we get to that item. Okay, not hearing any comments. We will move on to item number 4, which is to review the minutes of our March 20th meeting. Does anyone have any additions, any comments they want to make about those minutes? They've been posted for a while, so hopefully everyone has looked them over. Okay, great. Not seeing any, so we will accept those minutes into the record as they are written. Okay, we'll go on to number 5. Number 5, the item is Chris Granda's report on affordable housing strategy. He requested to do some research and make a report. I will remind people that the Housing Committee was tasked with looking at affordable housing. It was formed 3 years ago, I think, in order to directly deal with the housing question, and in particular, the affordable housing question. So this discussion may be more relevant to them. Obviously, the Planning Commission has a role, but it was at the time such a large task that the Planning Commission wasn't able to do it as well as the other things that we do. So the Housing Committee was formed by the Select Board and was given the task of looking into affordable housing. So hopefully this conversation carries over to that committee. So Chris, do you want to get going?
Yes, thank you. Let's see, is my camera on?
Yep.
We got your visuals. Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, my intent tonight is to put the Housing Committee report, the town plan, and a bunch of other materials in the context of the decision that we're being asked to consider here in the Planning Commission about what to do regarding the regulations that are pertinent to Jolina Court. So I will try and move through this quickly. Please don't hesitate to interrupt me if something I say doesn't make sense or you have any questions, but I'm just going to try and move forward and then stop to ask questions along the way. So for where we are today is that Buttermilk and the town of Richmond have a successful agreement that cleaned up the old creamery site and added additional much needed housing to the village, I think that we're all familiar with. Those regulations that have governed the site to this point were implemented in 2016, and they put a limit on the number of housing units and required that a percentage of the space developed be for commercial use. There was also, the other regular requirements regarding parking and so forth and so on. Buttermilk successfully implemented phase 1 of the development at Jolina Court. That's the building that we see today. Since then, conditions obviously have changed in the world generally, and in the commercial real estate market particularly. We've discussed them here as well. Now, Buttermilk could proceed with phase 2 today under the existing regulations, but they've chosen to approach the town to seek some changes. So that's just framing the situation. Does anybody on the PC have a question about that or an objection to the way I've characterized that? Okay.
Well, I do have one comment, which is that the buttermilk material is inconclusive on the point whether they actually could proceed or not with the current regulations. They have a permit. They have received a permit from the DRB for building 2, but in other parts of their material, they have stated that with the commercial requirement, they are not able to proceed because they can't get financing.
So by could, what I meant is there's nothing in the town regulations that prevents them. I'm not debating what you said at all, but obviously the commercial lending market is not under our jurisdiction, so we can't really do anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else? All right. So positions as I understand them, and people may want to adjust these, is that Buttermilk would like to have the commercial space development requirement either relaxed or eliminated for phase 2, and would like to expand the number of housing units that might be included in phase 2. Did I get that right, Josie? Was there anything you want to add to that?
I would use a little bit different vernacular, i.e. my thoughts is that I think we want to remove unrealistic barriers that have prevented progress for 5 years. And, we want a mixed use development, and we want to put mindful, accurate, viable commercial businesses along with residential units. At what volume? We've always been a level of trying to work with you guys on what that right volume is. We have certain economic challenges, but that across the state, there was just an article, the Ways and Means, coming out just now from VT Digger about how to do that. So that's what I think. Like, there's intent and there's realism,
Sure.
and so that's balancing.
And my attempt here was to use as neutral language as possible, but I think you and I are in basic agreement about what
I think from the beginning, we've been trying to give you options. The presentation in December of this year was to give you various different options so that you guys as a committee and a community could figure out how best to address the housing needs of Richmond and Vermont. And so there's things. So anyways, that's that. So yes, but I just wanted to make sure that it's not really one, we want to progress, right? We do what's right, but we don't want to put additional burdens that makes it impossible that we were asked to do 5 years ago, and frankly 8 years ago, that we've said, hey, this is not going to work, so.
Okay, so I'm just describing everybody's positions here, so I think we're good. So at least some members of the PC would like to make sure that some of the units in phase 2 are available at either below market rent, if we're talking about leases, or below market prices, if we're talking about purchases, with a mechanism to preserve those price decreases for some period into the future. At least some members of the PC would like to simply relax the commercial space requirement. At least some members of the PC would like to address a lack of parking in the village in the context of this exercise. And Mark brought that up at the last meeting, and I guess he's not here yet. So I don't know if anybody else would like to speak to the parking concern. Okay. Well, if he joins us later, we can come back to that. So let's talk about where, as one of the main voices behind the idea of addressing affordable housing, through this exercise, let's talk about where that comes from. So the current town plan is dated 2018, and there are 12 chapters. And at the start of each chapter, there's a call-out box with bulleted priorities. Affordability is the first bullet in the call-out box for the chapters on community development, economic development, emergency resilience, energy, future land use, housing, natural resources, transportation, and utilities and facilities. What that means is the only chapters that don't explicitly prioritize affordability are education, which isn't within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, and historic resources. The town plan reflects the input gathered from Richmond citizens and reflects their hopes and fears about their futures in the town. Given the importance that the town plan gives to affordability, I believe it would be negligent of the Planning Commission if we were to ignore affordability in any policy that we propose. Now, Virginia mentioned the Housing Committee report, and I definitely think that it would be good for everyone in the committee to spend some time with it if they can. It had a series of recommendations, and related to housing specifically, obviously. So those are fostering a culture in Richmond that welcomes new housing to residents. And I think in general, that's what we're trying to do here, is to create new housing in Richmond. Advocate for projects that would diversify and enhance Richmond's housing stock. And there's explanations of what diversify and enhance means in there, but we won't go into that now. 3 is produce an annual report tracking metrics related to housing creation and affordability in Richmond. 4 is explore the land trust model to create new housing and preserve the affordability of the existing housing stock in Richmond. 5 is to assess the condition and efficiency of Richmond's housing stock and recommend actions to promote safe, healthy, efficient, and affordable homes. So affordability plays an important role in 3 out of the first 5 recommendations. And then there's some more specific, the remaining 4 recommendations don't specifically refer to affordability, but, actually put things potentially on the Planning Commission's docket too, of things that we might want to consider. Number 9 is not affordability explicitly, but it does say revise Richmond zoning and subdivision regulations to support housing choice. Escalating housing costs are pricing out both younger and older residents. And the report also identifies Jolina Court as the first priority site for the development of additional housing in Richmond. Now, what the report recommends is that Richmond adopt the traditional neighborhood PUD for priority sites. And I want to go into an explanation of that, but that's also described fully in the report. And TNDs, these traditional neighborhood housing PUDs, must include mixed income housing. And there's a definition of what that means And specifically, it's for ownership units, having at least 10%, having a purchase price that at the time of sale does not exceed 100% of the new construction purchase price limits established annually for Chittenden County by the Vermont Housing Finance Agency. And for rental units, at least 10% of the units have to meet the definition of affordable housing under state statute. So the town plan does call for building more market rate housing, which is what has been proposed here. But it's also clear that the lack of affordable housing, particularly for middle and low income citizens, is not going to be met simply by building more market rate units. That's also a clear finding of the plan. And the plan the report rather, calls for additional measures to address affordability in Richmond. So again, I think it would be negligent for the PC not to consider affordability and the resources that are available to provide affordability of housing in any of the changes to regulations that we consider, including Jolina Court. Any questions about that?
Yeah, it looks like Joy.
I do, Chris, where did it become clear that building market rate housing is not going to help with affordability?
I didn't say that. I said that.
Oh, I may have misheard you. Can you repeat that, please?
So what I said was that what the report says is that it calls for building more housing generally and market rate housing, but also makes it clear that building market rate housing alone is not going to solve the affordability issue that we have in housing for middle and low income residents of the town.
And okay, I don't. That's a conclusion that we came to in the town plan, or that you're inferring that
the housing committee came to in their report.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sure. So now I reached out and did some of the research that I thought we had originally talked about in a prior in our earlier meeting that then was taken off the table, and was only able to scratch the surface because there are so many initiatives going on in the state right now to promote and encourage affordable housing. We have talked about S100 here a number of times that passed last year. That allows that in residential districts served by sewer and water that affordable housing may add an additional units up to 40% of the density. I'm not exactly sure what they meant by that, but I think the idea is that it allows increased density and may add an additional floor or not to a building if it qualifies as affordable. And then there's the prohibition on requiring more than one parking space per dwelling unit, which we have discussed here, and that further affects the discussion about parking if we were to include the parking discussion in how to address the Jolina Court. And again, it's too bad Mark isn't here because I think he brought up some points of concern that I'm not sure that I share in the same way, but I wanted to give him the chance to make them as well. Another resource to consider is the Rental Revolving Loan Fund, or the RRLF, from the Vermont Housing Finance Agency that provides developers of middle-income rental units with subordinate loan of up to 35% of the cost of eligible construction costs. So this doesn't require third-party ownership. This doesn't require the town to be directly involved, but it would give Buttermilk additional source of financing, which seems to be an issue, at least according to them, for financing this kind of project. Now, the unfortunate thing about that is that the applications for this opened on March 1st and closed on April 29th. I just want to point out that had we gone and done our outreach as originally planned, we would have known about this earlier. It'll be a scramble now if this was something that we wanted to pursue. And then on and reaching back a little further, in January 14th of 2022, the Joint Fiscal Office of the state issued a brief on rental market supply resources, and there's a list here which I'm not going to read all of, but examples from that include federal low-income housing tax credits, the Home Investment Partnership Program, National Housing Trust Funds, and that's just to name a few. Now, I called the person with the most expertise and longest professional experience with affordable housing in Richmond town government that I'm aware of, and that's Bart Hill on the select board. And we talked about that, and he said, well, yeah, that I had it right. I was basically just scratching the surface and just, finding some of the things that were available, and that there's a lot out there. And what it requires is somebody to go out and more methodically take a look at it. And it sounds like, not an insignificant amount of work. I also talked to Connie Van Egan. Is Connie on the call? I can't see all the participants.
Does
Okay.
not look like it. I don't see her.
And we talked about the report because I wanted to ask her some questions about it, the Housing Committee report, but also about the status of the Housing Committee today, because as Virginia noted earlier, they did a lot of work on preparing that report, which wasn't something that other town committees were able to take on. And I wanted to see what the situation was about doing, additional research. I was happy to hear that after, I guess, nearly disbanding after the report was issued, they have taken on some new members, and at least Connie seemed to think that they might be willing to take on some work uncharacterized. I didn't attempt to, make a scope of work for them. All right. Any questions about any of that?
So, yeah, Chris, I have a question about for instance, the revolving loan fund or the tax credits. Now, that is something that the developer would apply for?
Well, again, I've only scratched the surface of this, so I can't claim to understand how it works in detail, but yes, for the, let's see, let me go back here to find it. And if anybody else has got more experience with this, please speak up. But this is, the rental revolving loan fund administered by the Vermont Housing Finance Authority provides developers of middle-income rental units with subordinate loans of up to 35% of the cost of eligible construction units. And it's accepting applications now.
So can we ask Josie or Brendan, since they're here, if they looked into that?
All I know is when I met with Revy and the Vermont Finance Association, those guys, we had a long call, several hours, and went through all those programs, and that program was mentioned. I didn't have these notes, so I would have done my due diligence. So I did not know what we were going to be talking about. But I know that we went through all their programs, the Vermont Finance Housing Association, and literally we went through every program. And I think that whether we were located in a wrong place, the size, the density, what the ownership structure, all of that stuff is, there weren't programs out there. I reached out when we started this conversation back in December, and I asked them if there had been any programs that have changed based on the current climate, because everyone's talking about housing and affordable housing. And honestly, I didn't even get a response, because normally if you don't get a response, that means that there isn't anything new. So what I could go look at my notes, but I didn't know that we were going to talk about this. All I know is that the other conversation that we've had around this, and we've talked with several people, is all of that equates to complexity, which equates to cost and time. So I think that's like, if that is something that we're in our 6 months talking about this, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And if Richmond, and I want to go back and clarify something that Chris keeps saying, what I still don't understand what Richmond wants to define as affordable housing. And I've asked this in December. And I requested that you guys come up and have a debate within your community, because I just read through the housing report and I read it when it came out. And the affordable never meant subsidized and low income. It meant affordable workforce, which I know workforce tends to be a trigger word with you guys. I don't understand why, but workforce, we are providing that workforce housing right now. We've explained that, we've shared that, etc. So I think if you want affordable housing, and you think that that comes in a certain package of defining characteristics, I think you guys got to work through what that characteristics, and then we can say, what are the incentives out there that we as a developer can look at? And that's part of my pushback to you, Chris, is that affordable is such a lofty term, and that affordable could mean 60% of AMI, which means that they need secondary like food banks and all of those other things. So I think that's part of what we need to kind of define what you mean by that. And then I think that we then need to figure out what is the, what is that incentive for us to look at it? Because I gotta be honest, just you've all agreed that removing the commercial is the right thing. We're never going to be able to progress. That's not a carrot alone. We can't finance a future building, plus with all the affordable, unless there is something. So,
Yeah.
anyway, sorry, my brain's not fully functioning as normal, but I think that's where, if that's something that it's now sounding like you want to go back to the drawing board and define these programs, and figure out those programs that we've been asking for months for. I can't really invest any more of my time in talking about this until I understand actually what you want to do and whether or not it's even feasible to do that, because we've walked down this road with you guys so many bloody times.
Josie,
and that's where my level of frustration is.
Okay, but we're not going to go down that road tonight. I think you and I agree on that's where we are. That what I'm proposing is that we figure out what it is we want you to do. We put it in front of you, and then you tell us whether you can do it or not.
Yeah. I mean, and I think you've got to do it as a carrot, not a stick.
Well,
I mean, just to be full strength, and I can't wait for Keith's report, because the February 7th meeting was all about stick, because you guys said we were non-compliant about everything. And that whole report has showed that we spent hours of taxpayer dollars to show nothing.
Okay,
and I'm
Josie,
getting
you're going off.
No. I'm saying if you want us to make this work, we've got to approach it in a collaborative way, which we have from the beginning, saying, hey, let's make this simple. Remove these simple, agreeable barriers. If you want, here's a way. How do you want to define affordable? And it just always goes back, and we're going to talk about parking again. We have overabundance of parking. So much parking that we could, FYI, zoning doesn't allow us to offer leases on parking, which we've been starting to look into. And we just keep talking about the same things. So I kind of don't even want to have a real productive conversation about this until you guys decide what you mean by affordable housing. Is it workforce? Is it affording housing that is affordable? Is it low income? Is it subsidized? Is it Section 8? Come up with that definition, because that would help, and write it down so that we all agree to it. And what percentages, right? Because I would argue, Chris, that our housing, which we've delivered off of our own back, off of our own penny for 8 years, has given you exactly what? A mix of tons of units, some that are pretty low income, some that are moderate, and some that are better. And that's just a natural way that as a good developer, we want to approach it. So if that's a split that you want, come up with your percentages, and then we can better have an conversation. Sorry, again, I'm sick, but I'm also just really tired of these discussions, because I want to make progress. Right? I don't know. I mean, I know that was just me on a little tirade, but I think that's a well-deserved tirade, to be honest.
And in fact, we have talked about those definitions and what it is that we can ask that is going to be successful, in allowing you to get financing, first of all, for the project. And one of the things that you have said does not appear to be a viable solution is the strict sense of affordable housing in which the income of the residents is a key component. So we've talked about this, and that what you have offered is housing that is more affordable. In other words, if you look at what 80% of AMI is, that's where your rents, you have some rents in that category. So if you were to then require that the people who lived there only spent 30% of their income on that, that would be true affordable. But you have said that is not a viable model for you, and that the affordable part, the varied range of affordability based on size of units, is something that is possible. So that's my understanding of the conversations that we have had about those definitions. So it doesn't, to me, make sense for the Planning Commission to say, all right, we want true HUD, income-sensitive affordable housing, this many units, because there's no number of units
Okay,
that you have said is a viable model.
Virginia, I think you have been consistently putting forth a false premise that the choices between market rate housing, which is what we have in Richmond now, which means that they are units that are built and put on the market and rent for whatever the going rate is for a unit of that size, which is what we have. And the alternative to that is Section 8 housing. What my research shows is there is a range of things in between. And what we don't know about, we honestly can't discuss. That's the point that I'm making. And that was why I wanted to reach out. So I'm sorry, I just don't accept your position on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I haven't seen any evidence that suggests.
Because we haven't looked, and actually because you prevented us from looking.
Well, you're looking, so that's great. I mean, I'm glad you're engaged in doing this research.
Okay, so I think let's try and define the task a little bit here. I think now what you would like to do, and please, I'm gonna give you plenty of time to correct me here, but you would like to put a proposal in front of the select board to remove the commercial space requirement from the Jolina court zoning and nothing else. Is that correct?
You talking to me?
Yes.
No, and if you had looked at the draft that was presented, you would see that there were some other elements to it. So I would like to think that we're going to remove the commercial requirement, and in order to maintain the diversity of sizes, to allow there to be some additional density there, to put some additional units into the place where we removed the commercial from. Because otherwise, if you just use the same number of units and you have a bigger space, they're going to be bigger and they will all be more expensive units. Josie, you can correct me if I'm wrong about that. But in order to maintain a diversity of sizes, thus prices of rent, they would need to have some additional units. So my proposal, which is in the packet that we can look at some point, is to provide some additional density and to also give the opportunity for density bonuses for beyond that additional number of units that would include some of the things that we've talked about wanting, like senior adaptable units and these workforce units that are, and even in the density bonus proposal, there are true affordable units, but I doubt that the carrot is going to be enough to make it worthwhile for Buttermilk to take those units. But it is possible that they may be willing for the senior adaptable units, which were identified in the housing report, by the way, that the consultant did, was that senior housing was something that was desired. So these are adaptable. You know, they have there are guidelines about what is a senior adaptable apartment. And also units that remain at an affordable level, but without the income sensitive piece, which is the difficult piece to use and monitor, and most likely to cause trouble with the lending institutions. So that's coming up in my proposal when we get to it.
The proposal that you're talking about, that was what we decided to do at the end of the last meeting, right?
A draft.
Yeah.
Draft language. Yep.
I don't think I've received
Commission
that.
wanted the draft
Have other
language.
people received that?
I didn't get anything. I was wondering because I saw more documents to come. The only thing that I received was the report on Jolina Quartz, you know, how they did
Yes,
permanent
same
versus
here.
actual, and what, yeah, that's all I got.
Yep. So that went into the packet, and
Which packet?
apologies today, the planning commission's materials. So it
So
should
it
be in
didn't get
there now.
emailed out to us, is what you're
It
saying.
was not mailed out to you. It was placed on the Planning Commission home site.
Oh, okay. Did you send out a notice saying that it had been put in there?
I did not.
Okay.
So
Well,
I
I
sent
certainly
it to
haven't reviewed
Chris.
it.
I sent it to Keith earlier in the week. Yeah. And we'll, you know, because it arrived so late, we'll have to talk about, you know, we can go through it or begin to talk about it and provide some time for people to look at it.
But let's be clear that nobody has seen this yet, Virginia.
I've seen
Okay,
it.
so
I looked at it a lot today, actually.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
I certainly haven't. Doesn't sound like Joy has. I don't know about the other members of the commission.
I can send a link to you guys if you want it.
No, I know where it is now that I know
It's
that
on the
it's
page.
in there.
Yeah. I mean, in general, we try to post the materials by the weekend. I do have the feeling that not that many of the commissioners read these materials over the weekend, that mostly people read them on the day of the meeting. However, this time it became delayed because of a variety of factors in the planning and zoning office. There was too much going on. So, you know,
Okay.
we'll have
Well,
to
let's-
continue with it, but it's there. That's the
getting-
draft proposal.
Getting back to my presentation here, it sounds like the task or the task as you proposed it is to put a proposal in front of the select board that would remove the commercial space requirement and do some other things.
Right.
And we'll know what those are once we get a chance to look at that. And to me, the advantage is that this checks the item off of the commission's list, but has the obvious disadvantage that it doesn't address affordable housing. The unit of number of units, though I guess it does, is what you're saying, Virginia, because of the density size, or it doesn't sound like it addresses the parking issue. And
Well, it does address the parking. There's a section in the parking as well.
Okay.
So,
all right. And what this does is basically kicks the can to the select board without answering critical questions. And my understanding from talking to Bard is that if we do that, there's a very high chance that the proposal will simply sit at the select board for an extended period, because select board doesn't have time to address these things or to answer the questions that have already come up in the planning commission. Now, Bard wasn't able to join us tonight. He's recovering from COVID. But as I said, he's the affordable housing expert in town government that I'm aware of. And he's interested in this topic. He certainly can't speak for the rest of the select board, but I guess knowing that, do you have, Virginia, you have a political strategy for moving this through the select board, knowing of the potential opposition to it?
well, so I have a couple of things to say about that. One is we're not even at the point of presenting anything to the select board. This is all coming to the planning commission to do the vetting at our level. So I'm not overlooking that step, that we're going to take this draft and, like we have for all the other zoning amendments, we're going to talk about it at our level, add whatever We're going to talk about each part of what is being presented in the draft. We're going to go through the options. Could this be done this way? Why is it being done this way? What are the benefits? And I mean, that all comes first before we're going to the select board. That's point number one. Secondly, we don't know about this select board. We have 2 members of the select board who have been there for a long time. Maybe they're invested in the way back history. We have 3 members of the select board who may be quite open to it, as far as we know. So I don't want to poison the water by saying this is not going anywhere. I want to do the political work right here and now. We can talk about it. We can talk about the numbers. I just don't want to put a package together that the developer is not going to be able or willing to do. So that seems to me like a waste of time. So I would like to come to this compromise that looks at the history, which we've looked at, compromises the history with the current reality of the situation. When we talk about agreeing to remove the commercial, this brings up the question, what's going to go in that space where the commercial requirement has been required and is no longer? Are we going to just make those units be bigger? You know, this is the discussion that we would like to have. Or are we going to put some other units in there?
So
I think we settled the question of not involving a third party in this project. This is not the project of this developer. To have a third party owning a piece of the project.
And again, that's a
making it
false
into
premise
true-
that is the only option available in order to pursue affordable housing, meaning below market rate housing. So I think what we've heard from the developer tonight is that they want us to tell them what we want to do and what our objectives are with regards to affordable housing. I thought that was a very open and welcoming approach to take. The only one who is saying that the only option is, Section 8 third-party owned housing is you, Virginia. That's not what anybody else seems to be telling us.
I don't know. I don't hear Josie leaping in and saying they're willing
I
to
haven't
do
seen any
affordable
of those.
housing.
I haven't seen any of those, Chris. I genuinely have looked into this and I've had multiple conversations. And as I said, and I think 20 meetings ago in this last year, if I'm proven wrong, we would look at it. But just based on information that we had in 2019, 2021, 2022, I did not get feedback for this year. Those programs are property, our location, and Richmond does not fit into those programs. If there's a new program, Act 47, I'm reviewing that in detail right now. I already asked Keith in programs because guess what? Act 47 says if I put X amount of things, I get to go up a 5th floor.
Yeah.
And your
Yeah.
fire department, but it's only for 10 to 15 years. And it's FY affordable is 80 to 150% of AMI. 150%. Do you know what that is in Chittenden? That's not quote unquote affordable, what you guys think is affordable. And so I just want to be realistic that a lot of feedback on Act 47 is that it took good steps forward, but it was not the penultimate. And it doesn't help smaller developers like ourselves. It helps really tiny developers or big time developers. And so anyways, so I go back to, I do support Virginia in terms of, we have looked at this and we've been willing partners. But we need to move forward, and that's just part of the challenges that we've had. And every single time we have a conversation, it costs money.
Rental revolving loan fund, is that correct?
It came up in my conversations with Revy in 2022. I have not looked at it since. I'm not going to lie, but it was in my notes. I did not have a chance to look at my notes to be clear about what that was, but I know it was part of that discussion. I don't remember.
My point is just that and as you said, there's a lot going on, a lot of new resources and innovation being brought forth. I just got an email today, which I even had a chance to follow up on from Peter Welch talking about 5 million
Act 47, Act 250 changes are going to change stuff.
Exactly.
Like there's so many policies, and I think that's where that, I think there's a part of it was like, what does Richmond want?
Exactly.
And what carrots can you give us to make it cost effective for us to make that happen? And then because let's just be very clear, in October, when we put a time plan together, my best case scenario was that we were going to have a building built by 2026. What's going to happen between now and 2 years from now? A lot. That would be my vote. As a human, as a Vermonter, I hope a lot. Okay, I'm dealing with legislation issues in Stowe right now. I just got off another meeting all about that. I hope a lot. What you need to do is create zoning that incentivizes a developer, whether it's us or another, us on this property, to try to find and play to what the best opportunities are, right? And I think if we try to do the real, and you have my commitment to always try to do that, I just don't know what that program is right now.
I
And if you can point to me, again, I reached out to the Vermont Finance Housing, the people that Revy and I worked with, and said, is there anything new? Help. Because remember, their feedback was, get the town to change density to make it more cost effective for you to build. That was their number one recommendation. That might have changed. Anyways.
Yeah.
So, and I'd like to find out if there's what the time pressure is here, because we can take a really long time to do this. Costs are only going to get higher. We can, look into month after month, Chris, unless you want to do a lot more research, a lot more work, there isn't the time to do it in any kind of rapid way. So Josie, what's your time pressure?
I know Brendan.
Wait for 2 years? Can you wait for 2 years before you build your building?
I would ask the community, can we wait for 2 years? We've been waiting for 4 years. We went on the record, and I know you don't want to talk about the past, but I do think it's relevant. We went on the record after the last zoning and said, this is not, and Chris, you and I had conversations about this, this is not a viable zoning. We were in the middle of the pandemic. We got out of the pandemic. It's worse. Interest rates are not going down. If you read anything, interest rates might go down marginally, but the low cost interest rates that were yesteryear is probably a thing of yesteryear. So, and then construction, as you know, supply chain issues, construction, I think our forecast, Brendan, I think is on this, I don't know, is that when we looked at the last time at this forecast, the building plan at best case was 20 to 22 months if we were to build this. That means from an Act 250 permit, oh my God, that's going to take another 4 to 6 months. So when I did that rough estimate back in the fall to say best case scenario, I best case was 3 to 4 months of your guys' zoning. I knew that was a gamble, but it was worth a shot, right? Then I thought six months at least of permitting. Then at least a year and a half, 2 years of construction. So we are looking best case, end of 2026, maybe 2027. Brendan, do you think that's accurate?
It's optional. It can always take long, and you can always get held up by zoning, obviously, here, permitting. Things do take longer, but can it be faster? Yeah. The building, could be put up in 18 months, 19 months, 20 months. Yes, definitely. But yeah, just to address Virginia's thing, what are we fighting on timing? It just, I don't know, lethargy. Everybody, we're losing opportunities. The partners are actually, we only have a few others too, but they're getting burnt out.
They're getting burnt out.
What? No progress still, because they're not used to as much. We go at a different pace up here, understandably, and it's good. But this, it's been painful. It's been painful. So I was going to say, just for me, closing was love to explore would open the exploration of what you're proposing, Virginia. I'd rather just see the two simple things we've talked about, go into the select board to see where it's received, because we know that that took before 4 meetings and was killed after we'd spent like, over a year on the subjects of building and density and balances of commercial, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Matching the downtown density, removing the commercial. That was purely it. Super simple. And then we as developers can explore a couple of the proposals put forth about
Density bonus.
affordability, senior housing, or whatever. Try and come back quickly and say, okay, are we mostly there? Even 90%, 85%? Okay, let's go to the select board, because they might be like, back to the drawing board, you guys. We don't like any of it. And I'd be like, well, great. That was
I think just as
seven.
a point of history, I'm sure you guys remember, Brenda, I'm just adding on to what you said, is that from what I remember, in Virginia, and Chris, keep me correct, is I think the density bonuses thing was a discussion across multiple different segments. And that was the original conversation in 2019, because what you wanted to do was incentivize, at that point, environmental, that point in parking, affordability. There was all these different things that we looked at density bonuses, and you guys want to do it town-wide. And frankly, some of what you're talking about, Chris, could probably, especially with Act 47, which I just reread and it's very boring, is some of those density bonuses coupled with Act 47 could help on some of what your affordability stuff is, where it doesn't really work within our property. So, I mean, that would be, I'm not on your planning commission, and I know everything that comes out of our mouths, it seems, is evil developer language. But keeping it simple so we can start and then figure it out. If you can add in density bonuses to incentivize, not that just for us, but for other developers, other landholders, like maybe that will give us time to understand those systems, to understand the processes, and get part of these new programs that might be coming from the state and the federal level.
Yeah, I think, actually what Brendan just said, I think was a really good sort of description about how the vision that I've been trying to bring to the Planning Commission of a politically realistic and engaged way of doing this. We need to, it's a waste of time, of everybody's time and effort, to put something in front of the select board that we don't think they're going to accept. If we know what is generally acceptable, and the second phase is, for members who don't necessarily have an opinion or aren't terribly engaged on it, we start having that engagement beforehand and find out what their concerns are. Then we can address them in the proposal that goes to the select board, because I think what's in the best interest of the developer and the best interest of the planning commission and of the town is that all of the relevant parties who are stakeholders in the decision making are represented, so that we know what those interests are and we can show that we listen to them ahead of time. And that's not the path that we're going down here. What would be a real waste is for us to send something to the, fight about it in the planning commission and send it to the select board where it disappears for a year again. I think we can all agree that that's not an optimal outcome.
Yeah, well, and I wasn't even suggesting that. I'm suggesting that we
nobody
start
suggests
to have
that.
a
I think that's what
draft
we're gonna
so
do.
that we present to ourselves what we're talking about. And then if before it goes to the select board, if we want to go to the select board and have conversations with them, then that's great. We can do that. But we need to, be organized enough to have some presentation for them. So that's where I'd like to go. Anyway, Patty has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the question that Chris and all of you actually were talking about. Josie was talking about. So, what does Richmond want? That was the question. What does Richmond want? And at our town meeting, there was quite a bit of discussion about housing, and then there was a resolution that I think it was pretty unanimously. People said yes. Was to have that the town wanted to have a conversation about housing and what it is we do want. And that was brought to us by the housing committee, I believe. And so I guess I would say that the housing committee theoretically is going to engage with us and ask us what it is that we do want, and potentially pursue some of these avenues that Chris is talking about. I've also done a bunch of research in things that are available. And so, I mean, I think that we could have an answer to that question, but you know, I see Connie is on here right now, and am I right, Connie? Is this what your committee? Are you guys going to kind of? What is it that you're going to do as a result of that resolution?
We are working on that. If I may, it's okay for me to speak. We're working on that. We are developing a shared resource through Mark Hall's work to come up with what are the different sources of information that our community needs to know about and access. And from there, we're going to build an idea of how to engage the town. And that conversation's always information sharing. So we haven't developed a proposal yet. But that's the direction we're going. And I'm going to just check in with Virginia here because she's on the same committee as I am, right? Did I say it correctly, Virginia?
Yes, and I would say that that proposal is not going to be speedily completed. That's a lot of work. There's going to be, you know, and it's too late for this project. This project is on the books. This is an existing project. They've been trying to do this for a long time. That conversation is important. We need to have the housing discussion. And the committee has started looking at different things. Maybe extending the sewer line is what we need for more housing. Maybe we need to start a fund in Richmond, depending on the tax rate, as a housing fund. You know, we may need radical solutions, but those radical solutions aren't relevant here. It's too late.
So
Is my take
those
on
are
it.
radical solutions, but it's too radical to talk about delaying, and we don't know by how much of a delay this decision until we get a chance to do some more research. I don't understand.
Well, I don't know. You're going to have to ask the developers if they can have this kind of delay. It will be months, Chris.
This
This
isn't the
discussion amongst
developers
us.
commission, it's the town's commission. I mean, we work with the developers, we're partners with the developers, but we represent the residents of the town, not the developers.
True, but this is why would anyone come to Richmond to develop? I don't understand. If this is what we do to them, is we impose our will on their project. This is a project of this developer on their piece of property. This is not a 2-year conversation that we can have about what the town wants on this developer's property. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work for me. Joy.
Well, I can speak to this because I feel like the town missed, and I'm sorry that I'm in my living room right now, the lighting isn't great, but I feel like the town missed a huge opportunity with our property because they kept doing this to us for 10 years. Let's do it this way. Let's make them do it that way. Let's try this. Let's try that. And we just gave up. And I think that the town missed a huge opportunity, and it's sad. And we had to do what we had to do. But, and I could just, I see what they're going through. And I know everybody has a hard time with, well, they just want to make money. Yes. Yes, that is the goal. Why would you do this otherwise? Just to put yourself through all this anxiety and stress? I just don't even, it's really hard. I get really worked up listening to this. So I suggest that, you know, we all take a little break from it and think about it and come back to what is it that we want? I agree. That's what we have to decide. But Virginia's right. It's too late for us to be dragging our feet, and let's just move on to things we know we want to do. And then we can continue to work on the affordable housing conversation. But I'm having a hard time listening to what to me seems like a stall tactic. And that's what I listened to for years. So that's how I feel about this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And we have 31 units that we could have of housing, of diverse, of relatively affordable housing units. That's what's waiting. Why don't we go there? Mark.
Hey, sorry about that. I had some trouble. I guess I hadn't acknowledged that this was a recorded meeting yet. Yeah, basically, Joyce got a really good point. Certainly agree with that. But I mean, we're spending a lot of time talking about this affordable housing stuff, and we really don't know what we're talking about. Nobody knows yet. Nobody on either side has an answer about, okay, how do you define it? How can it apply here and whatever? And so I'd like to ask that we let's move past that conversation. We'll obviously circle back on it. There's a whole component of section 615 density bonus. It talks about different types of affordability, and we can always come back to that either as a density bonus or just a requirement of the development itself. But I really like to at least start to talk about what Keith has sketched up in these two documents, so we can begin to make some sort of progress. Whatever, we can certainly circle back and do affordable housing later, but let's try to move out something along that we accomplished tonight.
I do want to add just real quick that the document that there is a collaboration with Virginia and myself, so it's not just my thoughts. It's
okay. Good.
So,
good to know.
I have a separate doc also that is in process too, and the whole point is to get you folks marinating on this, for lack of a better term.
Thank you, Keith. I'd love to see your cut of it too. As the town planner, I'd be interested to see your approach to those two things as well. Obviously, we're going to take everything into consideration.
Right.
But whatever we can do is like substantive, move forward type of stuff. Let's have those arguments, and then between meetings, whoever's interested on both sides of the perspective can dig more into the affordability housing issue and definition, and we can always talk about that next meeting.
Mark, have you had a chance to review the piece that Keith pulled together yet?
I've been doing that while you guys have been talking about affordable housing, which isn't going anywhere. So yeah, I have actually just
since the meeting started,
the day of the meeting, which is very typical. But I actually was able to do it during the meeting this time because you guys keep rehashing these things without any real clarity of this is what we want, this is what the regs are, this is how we move forward. It's been a I don't want debate without any progress for a bit, it seems like, not just tonight, but previously. I have my own opinions on it. I'm not even going to get into them. I just want to at least try to accomplish something concrete tonight in some dimension, or at least discuss it.
Okay, so should we just wrap up the affordable housing discussion? And does anyone else have anything they want to say about it? Bonnie or Allison? Yeah, go ahead, Allison.
Well, I've just been sitting here listening to all of this and feeling a sense of gratitude and admiration and appreciation for all the people that have worked on this and thought about it and tried to deal with it. And I can't get beyond the fact that we had one heck of a flood this past year. We've had other floods. It doesn't matter what you build down in the village. If it's just going to flood, it's not good planning. And that's, we can't do a whole lot about that because of the topography of the land around us. And
This development is out of the floodplain.
well, so to speak. But
Well, that's what we've got to work with,
Yeah.
either in the floodplain
Okay.
or out of the floodplain. So,
yeah, and I think that those designations may even have to be changed. And I'm not a proponent of doing nothing, not at all. But I just feel that there's been an awful lot of damage from the really sad floods and too much rain and the really changes of the climate, that it seems to me that maybe we need to halt some of this in the interests of waiting to see what happens with the future, with things over which we have no control. I also have a good deal of sympathy for the people that have the buildings that they want to put a few more apartments in. I think we should let that happen. But we need to be mindful that the whole town is in rather a fragile situation. That's what it seems to me. Now, you asked what I think, so that's it.
okay. Great. Thanks, Allison. So one final comment on this segment. Bonnie, you have something you'd like to say?
Oh, I don't know. Just I think that this just comes to the fore because of such a robust conversation about affordability in general. And we need more than what we have, and we have very limited resources. And if there is very, very little land that's buildable that is not in floodplain, that's why this parcel is like, people have their eyes on it. And I totally get it. It sounds incredibly frustrating for the developer to have this can kick down the road. I get that. And I'm also wondering, how much is a 1-bedroom apartment in the Creamery building? I don't actually know the answer to that, but I kind of wonder if it's affordable for like a teacher or a police officer or an elder who might like to move out of their big house. So, I mean, that's why we're trying to get some kind of movement on a substantial conversation about affordability. And I think it's frustrating to have, I get it that there may be barriers for a developer, and of course they want to make money. This is their business. And I wish that there was more information. I would love to see more information brought to bear on how to get money to make it more of a carrot than a stick for them. And if there's that information out there, then I would really love for the housing committee, and I know I should go talk to them about it, but I'd like the housing committee to focus on that and make this project move forward with some intention for true affordability, not just market rate, we're going to make smaller units so they're not going to be as expensive. That doesn't really meet entirely the need that we're concerned about. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Can I just point Bonnie in a direction? Because we did a full analysis of all the tenants that are currently in the Creamery, and we shared that in the December meeting. And you can get a real understanding of who's actually there. And we currently have units that are between 70% AMI to about 110% AMI, and they're not just studios. I've repeated this multiple times. One of the 2 bedrooms that we offer is one of the most popular, and it's actually, I think it's 90% AMI, and it's just a smaller 2-bedroom. And so it's not just a tiny, everyone focuses on the studios. So a lot of that, we did a full analysis of the affordability and where it is based on the Vermont Finance Housing Association. And there's a list of who's in there, like teachers and students and med students and nurses and stuff like that. So I think Keith or someone could give you that report.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's
well, that's
also
interesting.
a comprehensive review of affordability of housing in the town of Richmond in the Housing Committee report as well.
Yeah, Bonnie.
So there's a range. Anyway, there's a range of affordable, and what many people, when they talk about affordable, is it's more affordable than buying an $800,000 house out in the hinterlands. That counts these days as being more affordable. So it meets a niche. Anyway, go ahead, Keith. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on where you can access these materials. You can go to the planning homepage or the planning commission homepage, and you can click on the specific meeting, and all that materials for all the past meetings for literally the last 20 years are on that homepage.
Well, that's good. Thank you. But I would like to see the town make a commitment to some subsidized housing as well. And
That's
and
good.
I don't know if
That's a-
this is the project for that, but I think that that's an important commitment to make.
Yep.
Yes, and I think the housing committee is also on that page, and they are looking for the way into that situation, which is not this project as far as I'm concerned, but they're looking for the way in. How can we do this? You know, what is it? What are the steps that the town is going to have to take? Are we going to have to raise money ourselves to have a housing fund? We have a conservation fund. Maybe we should have a housing fund that we start. You know, there are lots of different kinds of underlying infrastructure that we may need to make that actually worthwhile. We don't have services. We don't have transport here. You know, there are a lot of things that makes the funding unavailable, as Josie was talking about, because we're not really set up for having that kind of truly deep affordable. So anyway, we need all the kinds of housing. So, all right, anybody else? So
You're on mute.
Sorry, one really quick thing. It's interesting socially, you guys, is our 2 bedrooms are the last things to rent all the time. They drag on a little bit. As soon as the studio comes up, the kids, like when I was young, well, that's a long time ago, but if there was a 2 bedroom or a 3 bedroom house, you'd put out there, advertise for roommates, because a 2 bedroom, let's just say it's $2,100 at the $2,000 at the creamery. A 1 bedroom's $1,500 at the creamery. So you could be living for $500 less a month, just get a roommate, and the 2 bedrooms are way bigger than the 1 bedrooms. But it's just something that everybody should know, because you guys don't know if you have apartments that you rent, but when you're like, why is there so many studios and they're so disconnected to socially to each other? Nobody wants to live together anymore. It's really frustrating for me. I'm like, what is wrong with these kids? And I think it's all about social media and the phones. I don't know, but it's hard for us as the developer because it's easier to build a 2 bedroom and rent it, and it's whatever. That's it.
but your little studios are popular.
Very.
They go up. They're gone. They're
Yeah.
gone before.
And they're all different
gone
ranges. They're all different sizes. And just to help Bonnie and just to remind, our current concept for building 2 is that there's going to be, again, a range of different products. And frankly, I kind of want to we want to see what the market's like when we're launching, right? But some of the product is going to have gardens with all wheelchair access with parking in front. Some are going to be larger, nicer 2 bedrooms. Some are going to be smaller studios, because it behooves us. What we've had happen in the creamery is people move in and then they move to different units because there's a stickiness. They want to stay in Richmond. They don't want to move too much. And that helps us because it reduces our costs and our vacancy, and it just helps the community vibe. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of clarify that. And then there's a part of this is like really about trying to be, poor Keith and Tyler are so sick of my just questions about zoning. Part of it is like, don't have a crystal ball to know what's going to be necessary in 2 or 3 years versus what we need in 10 years, right? And that's part of what the PUD process requires us to do, is to be very clear. And we kind of want to be able to manage to what's the best from a market perspective, because we'll be successful, and then that will be successful for the town. So I don't know if that helped.
Okay, great. Well, I think that was a good discussion. Thank you, Patty and Bonnie, for coming to the discussion, participate, and Chris for doing the research that he did. Mark, something to say on this topic, or are
Just
we
really
moving?
quickly, I wanted to
Okay.
thank Josie for the reference to the Who Lives at the Creamery documentation, which is in the December 20th document files. So if anybody wants to look in to see who's doing that, it's not really a good breakdown of AMI, but it does state that several are below the 80% AMI. But it gives you a good perspective of the number of people living there and and the number of units in that building. So
Yeah.
good refresher if anyone's curious about the status so far.
December. So, generally in the last
December
4
20th.
months, 4 or 5 months, yeah, December 20th, the last 4 or 5 months will be this information that has come up, these documents. So, all right, great. Thank you, Chris and everyone. So let's move on a little bit, as Mark suggested, and look at some language and, see what we want to do with the language. And think about a draft that we will want to think about, and we will maybe want to discuss with other people like select board members, so that anyway, it'll be a start. And the first thing that we wanted to get off the table was just to see if there were any questions on the Buttermilk outstanding permit conditions issue. This has been brought up before, that maybe there are some outstanding permit conditions, and Keith and Tyler looked into this extensively and looked at the records and the documents, as well as looking at the property, and they found that there really aren't any outstanding permit conditions. If you look at that document that was put together, they looked into all the permit conditions that were applied to the different zoning permits from the DRB, and found that there was really only one, which was a permit could be applied for a change in the facade that hadn't had a permit. But the other things that were signed off by the then zoning administrator, Suzanne Montaigne, they were actually done because the records were checked and the property was checked. So were there any questions about that? Anything people still wondered about? We wanted to, kind of put that argument to rest, that the conditions had been fulfilled, and that, we expect other conditions that are put on to be fulfilled because these have been fulfilled. So any questions about that? Patty?
Yeah, I was just wondering if they have put in the EV charging stations.
Oh, yeah.
The EV charging stations have not been put in, and they were associated with the parking, the solar array that was erected there. So that's associated with that. That is a requirement when they pull the permit for building 2 for that to be completed per the development review board.
So we put in
so
the
we don't-
infrastructure that, I'll just be clear, I'll be even more clear, is a requirement. We had to put in the infrastructure, which we did. And just so you know, 2 years ago, we did an analysis. We asked all of our tenants, anybody need an EV, to try to get grant funding, because those are not cheap. And we went and did an analysis. Not a single person has an EV car on property and on site. So we actually failed. We spent a lot of money to do this analysis, and we failed to get the grant. We currently have an active application to get the funding from the state, and supposedly that we are in a giant queue of being analysis. We are committed to it. We're fully net zero. We want to put it in, but if the economics and the demand don't match, it's really hard to do it. From a permit perspective, we've been compliant with what we were required to do, and it will be done by building 2, because the whole purpose was that we're going to have the demand, the volume, right? With building 2, building 1 was trying to fund the brownfield cleanup, and it's still not doing that.
Really?
The reason I brought that up, and just in response to what you're saying, I would never have an electric car in a place that I couldn't plug it in, because 99% of the time you charge your car at your home. So I'm not surprised that no one has an electric car or a need where
But we
are.
also did the analysis, Patty, of the income you need to support an EV car.
Mm-hmm.
And our apartments and our participants and our residents don't equate to that. So most of the people have, moderate income. And I think that's where we have to be mindful of. And we had a huge conversation, I can't remember with whom, someone from Richmond and from someone in the state, where there's these like, you know, we all have an objective for an EV car, and we absolutely do. And, you know, that's why we put in solar, you know, we're committed to that. And that's when it's very expensive. But if the residents can't even afford the unit cost of the car, you know, it's like these counterbalances, like, because we gave back the affordability, like in the policy that they did 2 years ago around the EV stations, it was linked to affordability. And we were like, wait, you're asking someone who makes less than $50,000 a year to fund a $35,000, $40,000 car. That's upside down, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
and this is
Well,
changing. I mean, they're coming onto the market. The used
Totally.
EVs are coming onto the market, and if it's
Totally.
required to be done by the time of the CO for building 2, then we will expect that it will be
Totally.
done by the time the CO
Yeah.
is administered for building 2.
And I'll just end by just saying, I just bought an EV today, and with the incentives, it cost me out of pocket $3,500. So it is an affordable alternative. Saying that things cost $40,000 is really not true anymore. And it is quite affordable, especially once you've got it for $3,500 because of incentives. And then you're just using electricity. So I would push back on that, and you might want to look into that a little bit more, because there really are quite a bit of incentives right now. Okay, thank you.
Good job, Patty, with your bargain.
Yeah. Wow.
Sounds great.
Great.
Cool. All right. So were there any other questions about the outstanding permit conditions? Everybody read that document. They're okay with the fact that there aren't any outstanding permit conditions. So
can I ask one question? Because I know it's going to come up again,
sure.
right?
Mhm.
It's going to come up again because it came up several times before the February 7th meeting. And how will it come up in the select board? How do you guys propose, how will you help us to remove that barrier for progress? Because something caused almost every member to believe that. And I was dumbfounded when I heard that, because I had never received any of that information. So
Well,
how do you guys want to help us to squash that so we have a productive
we
process?
just did that. And let me
So if it comes up the select board, are you going to defend that, Chris?
We have a memo. This is why I asked the question. As a person who was on the select board at the time when the agreements were met, which was 8 years ago, I asked the question, do we know whether Buttermilk is in compliance with the agreement? And nobody was able to tell me. There was nothing to look at in terms of a memo like this one that goes through the agreement and said, yes, this is what was done. We have that now. It shouldn't be anything that anybody needs to talk about anymore. As long as this is accurate, we're good. We're both good. That's what we did.
I would encourage you to go back on September 7th. It wasn't that.
Well, show me if this exists already. Show it to me. But
We got a conditional CO.
So now we have
Yes,
the
I do.
memo, Josie and Chris. We
Yeah,
have
now
the
we have the
memo.
memo.
The work was done.
4
The-
years ago.
Documents were looked at. So
Can I ask one question before I
That's
can
what
move
we can
on from
do.
this?
yes, Joy.
It
Go ahead.
state-wise, did you guys have any issues with the permits that you pulled and your actual walkthroughs and certificate of occupancy? Because I feel like potentially that was an issue that could be confused with the town. But I don't know if that's true. That's what I heard.
What was the question, Joy, again, exactly?
So were there any issues with what you were permitted with the state and what you actually built and the certificate of occupancy with the state?
With the state, not with the town
Yes.
you're talking about.
Not with the town, but the state. And I felt that that was some confusion potentially, because I had heard that there were issues with I think how many units you built, or like the permit was
I know
pulled.
exactly who fed that. So no, absolutely not. We had to go through to get a fire marshal, you have to get a permit before anyone can get in.
I'm aware of that.
So no, we got absolutely, we had to go through because the project, we first submitted our first site plan in 2015 to try to get grants. We completed and opened in 2020. That's 5 years. We went through several different amendments based on various different reasons, from commercial needs, from residential needs, to just changing infrastructure. The one thing that was identified that was a gap, which is funny, is that I didn't even realize that we had to pull a permit, was we had to redo, because of fire and safety, the state permit person, we had to redo our ADA compliance ramp. That's the one thing. So no, we got full approval on everything. We got our Act 250. The 3 Act 250s we got. The third one we got in 11 days. Like, it was one of the fastest Act 250s things. I don't foresee that on this one, largely because we had had so many prior Act 250s. So
Right. But so when you did your final walkthrough with the state, was there an issue that was that brought up that was differed from your permit to when they did the walkthrough?
no, not that anything in 4 years has been brought to our plate or my plate. Brendan, I don't know if Brendan, you're still on the call, but no, because they would be not allowing us to operate, and they would be coming after us.
No, from what I heard, and again, like, rumors are,
Exactly, rumors.
What was was it Joy? What was the question? If there was anything with Act 250 walkthrough, or
No, it had nothing to do with Act 250. I feel like all of the rumors were based on a state issue and not a town issue. That when you did the final walkthrough,
like fire safety.
yeah,
No.
that there were issues when you did that walkthrough.
No, the only issue, to be honest, the only big issue, and it was a major issue, and it was a pain in the ass issue, was the false issue that when we decided to split one of the units into 2 units, and it didn't change the footprint, and we went through and got the fire marshal. It was when we went through, and then we went.
That was an administrative amendment that literally.
Right. But I'm trying to get to the root of the problem for you guys. I'm helping you out here. Okay.
Sorry.
I'm trying to put you in a spot. I'm trying to clarify. I read that document. I immediately sent an email to Keith saying, I think this was a state issue, not a Richmond one. And I'm trying.
No. The state was an administrative amendment, and it took.
But it was an issue, and it made you look like you did something that wasn't right. No, I'm just telling you, it immediately hit town streets.
Oh no, but I'm gonna
goes. Zip. Let her talk. Just talk. Joy's just recalling the time that Katie blew the whole thing up into nothing from nothing, and it was when everything went sour through the town. Of like, we were trying to pull a fast one, and it was like, everybody waiting because here's the evil developer that got the grant, that did the stuff, that cleaned the brownfield up. That suddenly we split the 1 unit into 2 and went and got the state approval. They said, good. We went and got administrative approval. And somehow, don't know how, it went completely haywire. And that was it. And I think that's what you're referring to, Joy. Is that correct?
I had heard something along those lines, and I knew it was on a state level, not on a town level. And I feel it's better that you guys just clear the air, and that's how you get by or you get through this. So we've got the town level and the state level. You cleared it through. It may have been a bumpy road and maybe not the best way to go through it, but it's better to have all the facts out. And that's how you get through these things, by being transparent. And, that's, in my opinion, the best way to go through it.
So just to clarify, I addressed this in the October meeting, the December meeting, all the previous minutes where we talked about all the past changes in the permits. So I've been very forthcoming around that information. We had several meetings at the select board meeting. The actual sequence of events was that we actually did the changes, got approval from the state, and then we don't even know how it got missed or misunderstood, and we were 6 to 8 months for operating, and someone on the select board caught onto it and created a storm that we were changing the footprint of the business, and then brought it to the select board. There's several meetings, and I think I identified it in our past notes throughout 2019, and it was actually started in 2018. So it was the state was resolved quicker than the town, and that's where the history was.
Okay.
So does this clear it up for everyone so that now we as individual and group planning commissioners can say there is not a problem here? It is not a problem. The problem was taken care of.
I think we can all
was a
agree that the
problem.
problem was taken care of and we need to move forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Let's
really
as
haven't
long
slept
as
well
we're-
for the last few nights thinking about that.
All on the same page
I think I'll be
here.
okay tonight.
So what was that, Ian?
I said I haven't been sleeping well on that subject for the last few nights. I think I'll sleep much better tonight.
Okay, good. And remember it into the future. So,
Good.
all right. So that's that. We have the documents. We can refer to it as needed to talk to other people about it. So we've got half an hour and we can just begin to look at some language and think about the changes that we're going to make, because we have an existing document, the current Jolina Court Ordinance, and we're just going to make some changes to it here. We're going to amend it. So starting out, and this is the document that Keith and I worked on together. It's totally open for comments. It's just a start, because that was what was asked, was a draft. So we can think about what language has to be changed. The purpose, if you look at the purpose needs to be changed to reflect the different emphasis. The purpose of the original language reflected the commercial emphasis. We removed the commercial emphasis because of factors beyond our control, but it's good for the town to remove that because there isn't any commercial need. So we put in more of the town plan's emphasis on having a diversity of housing. This is where we're going with this. So you can look at your leisure at this newer language and think, okay, is this where the emphasis should be on the diversity of housing? We're still allowing some commercial development that's compatible, but basically we're following state mandates and town mandates to have in areas served by water and sewer more dense, diverse housing. Any questions on that so far? Okay. Oh, where's my document, Keith?
Yeah, you're looking at it.
Okay. All right. So in the version that I wrote, we had, I had all my comments that explained it so that I wouldn't have to go explaining it. But here we go. I'll have to explain it instead of reading the red line comments. All right. So there were no comments. I didn't see any hands. We go to the allowable uses. These are the permitted uses. And we'll probably have to change that language to reflect the way we have the other districts that we've worked on. This is permitted uses.
Virginia?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but
Yep.
I don't know how other people feel about it, but not having had a chance to look at this before the meeting, and now not having a red line vision, so I can't even tell what's been changed. It's going to be difficult I just wonder whether it's a good way to spend our time.
There should be a red line version. I don't know why it's
I got it right off
not.
the website. Yeah.
Well, go back to the beginning. Does it have? Yeah, so it,
No.
Yeah, I don't
It's
see a
not-
red line version, but I would still like to at least spend what's left of this meeting without digging deep, but just perusing these things. I think there's some things we can still talk about, density and lot
Yeah.
coverage and those kinds of things. I think
Just
this
get the
still have
juices
some
going.
benefits, and we'll get off of our few comments we can get done tonight. we
Yeah,
can
maybe at a
headline version.
at a high level, rather than sort of trying to explain where the text has changed, but sort of what the thrust of the things that you did here in maybe broad categories. How does that sound?
Okay, that's fine. Yep. So purpose was just to change the emphasis towards residential. Go down to the permitted uses, and there aren't any changes with the permitted uses. They're the same permitted uses. We're not taking any permitted uses away. Those businesses can still be there. And, you know, one thing that we did in the RC districts is we put dwelling units as a permitted uses. Well, we already know that in a PUD you can have the dwelling uses, so we may need to add the word dwelling uses into the permitted section. So going down to the conditional use, there really aren't a lot of changes that are significant. You know, the planned unit development, we took away the part about only if there's a subdivision, if there's no subdivision of land. If there's no subdivision of land, we didn't understand why that was useful in the RC districts, in the IC district when we did that, so we removed that. But basically there's not a lot of changes there that are, you know, significant. All right, so we get to 3.9.3, which is residential density. So here we took a compromise between not changing the density. The original density was 15 units per developable acre. If you remember, in this district and the downtown district, those districts that we created a few years ago with Jess Draper as planner, the developable land was what was used for the density number. So in the original document, it was 15. And what we did here was changed it to 18 units per acre, which is halfway between nothing, no change, and the downtown district with the density of 24 units per acre. And this density would allow them 9 extra units. And to us, that seemed like a reasonable number that they would be putting into the space where the commercial had been removed. An additional 9 units. So this would be, and this number can be, you know, a range from keeping it at 15 or going up to whatever we want. The next sort of logical thing was the 24 units per acre, which is the same as the downtown district.
Logical.
So this 18 units per acre is a compromise. What?
Sorry, I was talking to myself about whether that 24 units an acre is really a reasonable option. That was another open mic error. I apologize.
Okay. Yeah. So it seemed like some people thought that was too much. Some people wanted to stick with no extra units, but if there's no density that's added, then the 31 units will all be bigger. And thus there won't be so many of those small studios. So this was a compromise there. So that's something that everybody will want to think about. And then moving down through the next thing that was changed was C under 3.9.3, which is that further units could be added as residential density bonuses. So what the developer could elect to do is to keep it really simple, just go with the 18 units. They'd have 9 extra units to work with. That's it. Or if we wanted to try to impose which is not going to be popular with the lending institutions, some requirements. Then we would go with the density bonus strategy, which is the other document that Keith and I posted, which we can look at in a minute, what those density bonuses look like, what they're for, what they're given for. So that would be the opportunity, and the developer would still have some choice here. They could go for some of those units. They could just go for the senior ones, which are the more desirable from a lending point of view, or they could go for more affordable type units. So we can look at that document in a minute. We can come back to that. But so that was the strategy here under the density, was to give them a small amount more density off the top, because then what we get more housing. We get more units, and they get to fill their commercial space with units that aren't necessarily bigger. There are some small units providing the diversity. Any questions about that? It's a strategy. Yeah, I mean, we've got to talk about all these things clearly.
I noticed in the example that was provided under residential density requirements, for this unit, for this property, since it's in this sector, I think we should be looking at actual units. So what we're looking at is, 1.22, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess the second example does actually reflect what we're dealing with. So it's a 2.97 acre developable plot.
Yeah.
So that math, I don't know, the previous example seems a little off-putting, but I guess you did that to clarify the rounding approach.
Yeah, and actually that was the example that's in the current zoning. Those examples.
Yeah.
We put in the current zoning to explain to people how it worked. It was just showing the rounding, the way the rounding worked based on Jess Draper's advice in the matter. So anyway, we can change those examples to whatever we want if we are keeping that rounding structure.
Yeah, I'm not even sure the purpose of it. I guess, I don't know, maybe we should have that somewhere else in the regulations, to step outside of this district and say, this is a kind of example you might want to put in some sort of general density section where we talk about, I don't know where that would be, maybe in the definition section or something as a rounding. I don't know if it needs to be specifically in Jolina Court.
Well, this is the only place that this is true.
Well, there's still a rounding issue, right? It's
Well,
true for 15 units per acre, but wouldn't that rounding
if you have
be applied to any of our districts?
In your districts that you have 1 unit per acre, it doesn't work. Anyway, that's a long discussion. We had that discussion a lot. I don't know if you remember, you were there, Mark.
I think I kind of do. Yeah. And then sort of struck me as weird then, and clearly it's reissued my hesitancy over seeing it again in this one.
Yes, it only works where you have a lot of units per acre. If you have 1 unit per acre, you don't want it to be that. You don't want it to work this way, but that.
Yeah, now we're at 5 units per acre, so that's easy math too, I suppose. But
yeah, we can talk about this again at some point. It's some zoning ordinances do it this way, and Jess Draper was a big proponent of it. Other ordinances don't really, and the rest of our districts don't really do it this way. So that's that piece. I'd hate for that to hold us up, because that's been in the JC district this whole time since we've had the JC district. So, and it's also in the VD district, the downtown district. It's in those two districts.
I guess I didn't like it then. I don't like it now, but move forward.
Yeah. Well, yep. You must have approved it then, but anyway, maybe you voted against it. Yes.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Quick question,
Josie.
just for my education and or memory. I don't remember, but I know that our district, and Keith, keep me honest about this, are based on developable acreage versus
Yes.
total.
Correct.
Yes.
Could you remind me, why is that? Because it does seem odd when we have a lot more land than, and it just might be perceived as odd. Because like,
Yeah.
to Allison's point about like we actually, none of our acreage that we develop on is anywhere close to the floodplain, So
Right.
just out of
Well,
curiosity.
Josie, all I can tell you is that the two districts that we did when we had the planner, Jess Draper, who was a proponent of this
Oh, so we're talking
strategy.
about the same thing. Sorry, Mark, I didn't get that you were asking the same question.
The rounding situation and the fact that the density was based on the developable land. It is not anything that we have in any of the other districts, except for the downtown district, which was done at the same time as this one.
Yes, I remember.
These two districts had those concepts that were introduced, and at the time, that was the recommendation.
Got it.
I'm
Went
sorry,
with it, and
Virginia, you're saying that none of the other districts have developable acreage density? I thought the whole town was based on developable acreage density.
well, it's just not written that way. So, like, if you think of let's say the ag res district, if you have 1 unit per acre, it's just 1 unit per total acre. Now, you're not allowed to build on the undevelopable portions. You're not allowed to use them, but they're not all identified, and the density isn't associated with whether it's developable or not. So, for instance, in this district, if we had gone the way all the other districts are, they have 6 acres or 5.5 acres or something, 6 acres, let's say. So the density would have been, let's say, 7 units per acre or whatever.
I think we all understand the math. My just
Yeah.
confusion was that this is isolated to just the JC district when I
And
thought
the
it was applicable
downtown
to the
district.
town, to the whole town, including Gateway, Agres, everywhere, that
No,
there's a deduction for developable acreage.
no, it's not written that way. Obviously, you can't develop where it's undevelopable, but the density is written for total acreage. And we can change that if we want, if we don't like the fact that these two districts, I mean, the goal at the time was to make the other districts like these districts, because it was a favored concept at the time. But when Keith and I are talking about it, we think, okay, in the ag res district, do you want to make density per developable? That means for every lot, you have to go out and assess exactly how much of it is developable. Where's the slope? Where's the wetlands? Where's the floodplain? You have to do all that work ahead of time. That is not done in the other districts. It's just this many units per acre of land.
Developable.
Per acre of land is how it's written, but you can't develop on the non-developable parts.
Sorry,
So
I
you
didn't
can't.
get off road. I was just curious. I couldn't remember where it came from. So anyways.
Yeah, that's where it came from. So
Yes,
we did
okay.
it, and
Yeah.
that was the favored language at the time. And there are zoning ordinances where it's all written like that. It's all based on the number of units per developable acre. And the rounding rule is like this in other zoning. And we just happen to have some like this and some in the older style.
Is that proposed language in the Village North and Village South?
No.
We should probably
No.
do that then, huh? Come to
Well,
terms with it, because it seems a tad inconsistent.
it is a tad inconsistent.
And the conversations I recall throughout the conversations that generally it should be based on the developable acreage, not the total acreage.
Well, we totally
So I
need,
guess that needs to have a conversation when we get back to North and South, and we can implement it there and then maybe find a general commonality. But it's in this one, and I think it should be in this one, unless we want to get rid of developable acreage and reduce the density number to
Right.
equate back to 45, because 45 is ultimately the number that people are thinking. It's not a density issue. It's 45 units
Right.
on this piece of property. So if you
So-
want to add the extra 3 acres of floodplain, then we
Mm.
can reduce it to 7.5
Right.
units per acre. So
Six and a half dozen of the other.
just all that being said.
So it doesn't change the total thing. It's just how you're writing it. And, you know, it, that is one of the problems with doing this, not the whole document at the same time, which we found we couldn't do either because we couldn't get it passed. So
And they're
we're
done.
doing it zone, district by district. And so then you think, okay, well, we'll change it gradually over to this, but you need to think about the unintended consequences. What are the unintended consequences of changing it all? So that's kind of a long conversation. That's what we got here. So, okay, then, got a few more minutes. There was under lot area 3.9.4, we get down there. The only change in the dimensional requirements was the minimum lot area, which is based on Act 47, has to be 0.2 acres. Now, this is not very relevant to this one lot that Buttermilk has. They have one lot. It would only be relevant if they were going to subdivide it. And they could now subdivide it into lots of small lots of 0.2 acres. So Act 47 requires that any district that has full-time year-round residential uses that are served by water and sewer, the minimum lot size has to be 1/5 of an acre so that you can have a density of at least 5 units per acre. Now, it's irrelevant for them because they're going to have a density of more units per acre. And they're not going to divide into all these little lots as far as we know. But so that's the only change there.
But we don't want to be out of compliance with statute, so that's why we do it.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly correct. We need it to be in there, and we need it to be in all the other districts that we haven't gotten to yet.
Right.
Anything that has full-time residential served by water and sewer. Okay, so that's all that's there.
Actually, under 394,
Yeah.
there's 2 things that caught my eye.
The
One
90%.
is lot frontage of 75 feet. And one, do we have, since this is all one lot, is there 75 feet of frontage on Bridge Street?
That was waived, right?
Yeah.
If it's district related, then why waive it and just change it? That seems like a weird waiving. Why are we waiving something that, if we're going to rewrite this, let's get rid of it and correct it to what it actually is, so there isn't any hidden, oh wait, that's a special exception by the DRB. No, we'll just change it to what's practical.
Well, I mean, this is talking about subdivisions, though. So I mean,
It's talking about lots within JC district, and
Right.
JC district is pretty much 2 lots. One of them is the Blue Seal Feeds, and they sure as heck don't have 75 feet. And the other one is the Buttermilk property, and I'm not sure that has 75 feet. So
well, I mean,
we have 75 feet in this document.
No, what I'm stating is those would be considered pre-existing non-conforming at this point based on this.
Mhm.
If they were to come back on that 6 acres and break that out into 1/5 or 0.2 acre lots, they would be required to have a 75-foot frontage. That's what that's speaking to.
Okay, I get that, but even that seems impractical.
But that's fine. But I just want to make sure that is part and parcel associated with subdivisions.
Right. So we've got a DRB waiver for the 2 properties that actually exist in this district.
I think it was a select board waiver, but I'm not sure.
Or
Either way,
Yeah.
let's change it to what's real, so we don't have to deal with the silly stuff.
Yeah, because Jolina Court the lot that is Buttermilk's, there's nowhere on that lot that has 75 feet of frontage on Bridge Street. There's nowhere. They only have that tiny little piece of frontage. So, I agree with you, Mark, that, we should make it smaller.
Let's make it legal. The other question I have is about the 90% developable ground area of the lot.
Okay, that's, yes, coming up, number D, lot coverage. Okay. So the question here was the following that Keith and I talked about was the way it is currently written. It says the ground covered by impervious surfaces shall not exceed 80% of the ground area of the lot. Now, it doesn't say developable in this part. So conceivably, the whole of the 3-acre buildable piece, 100% of that could be impervious surfaces, buildings, sidewalks, road. Do we want that? Or would we like to have a small requirement that in the buildable part, there's like a little green space that could be around the buildings? Or so that we changed to saying it doesn't exceed 90% of the developable acreage to make it match the other part where we've talked about the density per developable acre. That's totally up for discussion. But, if you say 80% of the total area, then they're always going to be way in compliance because half of their property is in the floodplain and it is not covered with impervious surfaces, although you can, according to our regulations, put parking lots there. So that's the question. Do we want to require that there be some small amount of impervious surface in the developable portion? So that would be something that you could think about as you're thinking about this document in the next, whatever. Mark, do you have any feeling about that right at the moment, or?
Are you reading my mind? Yeah, actually, I was thinking more about the 90%, more so about the stormwater runoff. And I know that's a big topic, and Keith has a lot of experience on that. But we haven't really got anything into this document. Is there something we want to consider? Because honestly, of the entire lot coverage, even if it was 80% and we put parking lots or they put parking lots down below, wouldn't we want to have some sort of stormwater runoff capacity? And maybe as part of the Act 250 process you guys are going through, and Josie could perhaps speak to this, maybe that already has to be done and there's some sort of contingency for stormwater. But I'm becoming more and more less concerned about lot coverage as I am about stormwater management, because ultimately that's what lot coverage means. Well, that's the whole purpose of lot coverage was about, allowing perkable land. Well, there's a lot of different ways to get to that, but ultimately what we need to do as a town, as a community, as a state, as a country is minimize runoff, contain that, get it down into the groundwater. So I don't know what the answer is here, but I'd like somehow to maybe wrap our heads around a little bit more about containing the stormwater runoff and caring less about lot coverage.
Yep,
Okay.
I can get you some of that language.
Do you want me to help answer what we have done or have to do, just to kind of appease and explain?
That would be informative for sure. What the
Sure. So we've already
has got you doing.
Sure. Why don't you do that, and then we'll have Chris, and then we'll have to decide if we're
sorry,
going
Chris, I
over
didn't even
time
see
or
your
not.
hand up. I apologize. So do you want to go first?
No problem. I was just going to note, as Virginia did before, that we are at time. I want to I want to note that a number of members of the community have stuck it out through the whole conversation tonight, and my hat's off to you for doing that. That's great. And I certainly wouldn't want to propose that we end the meeting before everybody who's been listening has had a chance to also comment if they want to. But and also in deference to Ian's proposal at the beginning of the meeting, it doesn't sound like we are close to considering a resolution or a motion, at least at this meeting tonight. And so I would propose that we adjourn the meeting once everybody who's here has had a chance to say what they want to say.
All right, so is there a second to that, or do people want to go on?
I would like to go on.
I
And
concur.
I apologize for not being here for Ian's proposal in the early hours. I was driving home from work. It was a long day. But what was that proposal that we
That we just can
part
go
of the-
on over time, that we go on if we're in a good place and we're making some progress. I mean, we don't have a lot
Okay,
more to
good.
cover. So,
I agree with that this hard 2-hour stop can be defeatist. I worked overtime today because I was ultra productive in those extra hours. And sometimes as a commission at the 2-hour mark, we can be pretty productive going past a hard 2-hour stop. And I understand that maybe not all members can afford that extra time. But if we could maintain a quorum, yeah, I think when the conversation warrants, we should go past that hard to stop.
Well,
okay,
quorum-
Allison, are you okay with going on a little longer?
You're on mute, Allison.
So,
Yes, my answer was yes, I am okay with going on. Sorry
okay. I
about
mean,
that.
I don't anticipate it being more than 20 minutes or something, unless people really want to go forth. But so that's 4 of us, because I'm willing, Ian, Mark, and Allison are willing. So if you feel you have to leave, Chris, that's okay. But we have enough people that we could continue the meeting, and we'll give everyone a chance to talk a little more at the end. Josie, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to explain some of the Act 250 stormwater retention process.
Yeah.
That is very much integral to the Act 250, and we've actually spent 2 years so the permit that we got through the town last year, we actually went for, I think, 3 or 4 rounds of permit reviews with the state. Stormwater is one of the biggest ones. There's lots of other ones, like there's green, there's indigenous species, bat retention, floodwaters, like there's tons, but stormwater is one of the biggest ones. And we have a third-party engineer that does a calculation on how much our impervious surface based on our exact site plan, how much water based on what's paving, what is soil, what is gravel, what is building, how that it goes, like all the engineers, much smarter than I ever would be, and come out how much water is dispersed into what areas. And then we have to have mitigation and management tactics of it. So on the site plan, you'll see that we actually have retention ponds, we have underground, all that stuff. Trust me, in those conversations, I go to sleep and I just want the engineer to tell me that they've achieved the DUTs. And more importantly, that then goes to the state to get approval. And so there's a whole stormwater process, a thing before we can even put a shovel in the ground.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark, you had your hand up, and then Allison.
Yes, thank you. Quickly, Josie, does anything in the stormwater permit management have anything to do with lot coverage?
Yes, all of it. So I mean, they look at our property and they look at impervious to our property. Based on my understanding, again, I'm not an expert on this. I don't even try to pretend, but this is what I've participated in, the information I've have to give to the engineer. It's multiple engineers that talk, but it's based about what volume of water is on our lot based on what's soil, what's building, what's gravel, what's pavement, and how the water then reacts to those surfaces in a different way, and how that's mitigated through the site because we have different sloping. So we had to, for building one, we had to create an entire artificial grade to have it slope. So if we were on site, I'd be able to show you, we actually took care of a stormwater issue for the town because all the stormwater that comes off of Bridge Street comes into a big channel that goes underneath our pipe, which if Brendan was still on, he would bitch about it for an nth amount of time because it cost us a crap load of money. And all that, like, we had to slope the property to get to this big giant thing. I don't know, what are those things called? I'm really tired. Like a big
Culvert.
culvert. Thank you. knew the word would come. A culvert to put it out into an estuary to a secondary culvert, blah, 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 blah. And that was based on stage 1, phase 1. We had to require that to move forward. Phase 2, because with i.e. phase 2, building number 2, not 3 and 4, not all the parking, we would have to hit other milestones in terms of retention. Once we do building 3, it's other milestones. And we've actually done a calculation by each of those densities. And each time we go and apply a permit. So again, part of what our problem is that we had to say, this is roughly what we think we're going to do, right? Based on this commercial, this residential, this amount of units, this type of infrastructure. And we had a conversation about the full site based on that. When we go to the Act 250 permit, which a huge part is the stormwater, we have to say, this is our actual physical final plan for our building number 2. And these are all the parking spots. And this is all this stuff. And then say, you need to mitigate X amount of gallons of water in this area, and you need to mitigate in this thing. And then they come up with different mitigation processes. Does that help?
It's really complicated.
Very much smarter people than me.
Do you have any green space in the developed area?
Yes.
Okay.
So one of the things that we did after you guys put in changes in the permit in 2022, you were talking about it, and Revy begged me to revise the site plan to put green space behind building 1, which I fully agreed with. And so I was like, Brendan, can we please revise the site plan to put like things? And that's why we hadn't screened the garbage because it's going to move. So there's actually like green space.
Picnic table or something.
Picnic tables. So yes, we are committed to that. We want that. We think we don't like the idea of paving everything. So I don't think the 90% of developable is a problem for us because I genuinely don't think we would ever want to achieve that. If something with things, but so I don't see that as a deal breaker in my mind.
Yeah. We want to make sure it's a nice looking space.
Oh,
so.
for sure. I don't want to death by paving. I mean, that's what we've always been like, hey, the parking challenges, we don't want to have to put in all parking, right? Like slow growth.
Right. Okay, good. Allison, yes.
My question was, did as you went through this process, which dragged out for a few years, did the rules and criteria change over that time?
They did. Thank you. Very frustratingly.
Yes.
Very frustrating, but actually not much impacting. So the lines changed a little bit, and actually the lines changed to our benefit. So we actually, the wetland delineation, so you go out and you say, hey, A&R people, Act 250, and they pull out this army of engineers that are specialists, and they say, you need to have your wetland delineations, we need to look at the latest floodplain, we need to look at your stormwater, we need to look at your areas of natural resources, we need to look at your indigenous species, like all of those different people we had to kind of go down through. And most of those didn't change. I had to do my 4th bat survey, which who knew? So, I mean, just some of the random things I never thought I would ever have to do in my life. But the wetland delineation is actually one of the things that changed, that actually showed that our property was less wetland than originally was identified. And I got to be full transparency. The current site plan, it's funny, Jim Feinstein just came back to me because
Feinstein, yeah.
Feinstein, sorry.
Feinstein. Yeah.
Came back to me and has said, hey, we might lose our community garden, which I've always been full support. We had multiple conversations about that, and it was supposed to be where Jericho Settlers has a spot. A&R told me that we had to remove that. And so, and I told him, I said, hey, if we go back to the mat on this, I'm totally up for it. We would love to have it there. But we were told by A&R, they wanted to take the farm road access to Jericho Settlers. We were told by A&R that and we had to get your lawyer and our lawyer to say that we have an easement and it's a legally binding agreement to that property. A&R was going to force us to pull up that road and rehabilitate it because they were changing. So some of these rules, it's really challenging because we do with all best interest to get transparency, to give them the information. And when we finally go to plan with building 2, the rules might change a little bit. So we might need to amend, you know, and so, but all of these things are like tacked off, and trust us. I think even if Act 250 gets changed, these type of things would not get changed.
Yeah.
I don't want them to get changed. I think that there's got to be some level of oversight as a human.
Okay, great. All right, so stormwater, that answers that, right, Mark? So I think the next piece that where there's any changes in 3.9.6 parking requirements. So the first point, the residential parking requirement shall be 1 parking space per dwelling unit. So this is based on Act 47. That's the basic, that you're not allowed to require more than 1 dwelling unit in districts served by water and sewer where there's year-round residential. So all of the different number of parking spaces per bedrooms would go away. It's just 1 parking space. Then the commercial remains the same, so we'll have to estimate what commercial might be there and the commercial in building 1. And then we put in number III. In addition to the required commercial parking spaces and also the 1 parking space per dwelling unit, 10 parking spaces shall be provided for, quote, public parking. And of course, this all has to be run by legal and see if any of this is legal or if it's even what we want. These spaces may be used by tenant overflow or tenant guest vehicles, customers of the community kitchen, or any other short-term parking needs. So that's just a stab at Mark's parking concerns. And
can I ask a question?
So
there's also the joint parking facilities questions. Yeah, who was that speaking there?
Sorry, there was me, and I think Keith probably
Okay.
already knows what I'm asking.
Yes.
So we've had 2 requests from neighbors. One, Richmond Community Kitchen still has not emailed me, FYI, but one other neighbor has requested a lease on parking. So how does that, is that a zoning thing? Is that an agreement thing? I want to be compliant. I don't know how to handle it. And because in first conversations with both Tyler and Keith, there was like that's thing, but it will start to be, because that's our land. We have to maintain it. We have to pave it. We have to develop it, all of that stuff. It's in direct. I just want to be transparent. I'm not playing it like anything. So
I feel like there's 2 different, you're bringing up a whole other topic about whether or not you're allowed to lease parking spaces, correct? And that's not allowed.
kind of, yes.
Well,
Okay, can we not discuss that right now and just stick with the topic of I'm just asking this. Everybody else, if you want to continue on with a lease conversation, you can, but I feel like we need to stick with what we have going on here. And
but the only impact it is those 10 spaces for public overflow, whatever, are potentially in direct I have to like do an analysis of parking, right? To
Okay.
like.
I understand that. My
so I-
comment is, Virginia, I would say that you want to make sure that you say where those spots are and they're not placed at the very back of the property, and that they're
Mhm.
placed, if you're actually gonna, if we're able to include this, you should designate where they're gonna be and not stuffed at the back of the property.
Okay, that's a good comment. And, you know, frankly, and Keith can speak to this, we don't know exactly how this would work. There's a joint parking facilities in 6.1.6, which might be applicable here, that it would be a joint parking facility with businesses off-site. So it all requires being looked into, and also the number of trip ends coming and going. You know, if we have additional parking that's off-site, people, how are we going to count those trip ends as to whether or not a new traffic study is needed? So this is totally conceptual at this point, and the number is totally made up. Keith, do you have anything else you want to say about this right now, or?
No, Tyler's in Argentina now, so I mean, he's a little bit out of pocket. He's the man that will have to make the decision on how this all works ultimately, but we are in discussion on that right now. And it's going to take a little bit of time, and it needs to be fleshed out. That's just really the long and the short of it.
Yeah, and there definitely are models where there's paid public parking, which, is either paid at the time, or presumably a leasing situation is like paid public parking. So, Mark, you wanted to say something about this.
I did, yeah. I'm a little concerned about this language being worked in the way it is into the district, because technically there are two properties on the district. So
Right.
then are we asking Blue Seal Feeds to supply 10 parking spaces for public parking?
Well,
They're grandfathered, right? Wouldn't they be
No, but
grandfathered?
my point is it's written into the zoning as such that you could argue that, okay, all the properties in this district need to be, and any subsequent subdivisions, and I doubt that's going to happen, but were it to happen, then each property is now expected to
It
provide.
could be written that it's a certain amount of units of housing would require it.
Right. That's kind of
And
where
Josie, in response to what you were
we lost you, Joy.
saying, I mean, yeah, you could potentially be possible income for this, parking that you're giving to the public.
Yeah. Conversely, there could be a public parking component wrapped into, and I don't know how this works out yet, but worked into the density bonuses, because pretty much everywhere there's in the village area there is a parking shortage, and this could be something that goes back to 615, the bonuses section, 615, whichever one that is. Maybe that's where it should be. Maybe that's where you go from keeping it at 15 to bumping it up to 18 with parking bonuses, and just throwing that out there. Yeah, I don't really have my head wrapped around it, but the way it's worded here makes me a little confused.
Yeah, well, it's a first stab at it, so it's really not flushed out. And,
Just
one thing we don't want to do is to obviate the intent of Act 47, which is only one parking space per residence. We don't want to write in something into our zoning that actually means that you need more parking spaces per residence. But anyway, these are all good points that this section definitely needs to be worked on.
But can I just add to that? We've always oversupplied parking. We know it's a resource and that needs to be supplied. But I do think that, to your point, Virginia, the one thing and I think I gave you this feedback, I can't even remember, if we add this, and especially like if we end up doing leases with other people, if we start to hit those triggers of traffic studies, Like, how does that get worked out? Whose responsibility, right? And, you know, to do that, if that's folded into a leasing agreement and a funding mechanism, sure, but you know, a traffic study and a mitigation, if and when we ever hit that level and have a portion of that is coming from the town or from partners,
Right.
we would just need to understand that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that would need to be spelled out exactly how that worked.
Hey, I just want to add that I'm fading pretty fast, and we're going to need to wrap up. I've been
I think I am
servicing the
too.
town- servicing the town since
I have a really
7:30.
quick question I'd like to ask Josie to consider and everybody to consider. And this was brought on by the posting and front porch forum tonight. Would you be amenable to saying that your new building would not have any short-term rentals in it?
Good question. We currently have not done short-term rentals.
Well,
but
you might not have, but your tenants might.
No, none of them do. We
Okay.
don't have, we don't.
Okay. I'm just
Ours-
saying, but you don't limit them from doing that right now.
I think that their lease doesn't allow that.
No
Okay.
subleasing.
So
I don't
I'm
think
just-
it's sublease. And FYI, I've been monitoring it. Because frankly, yes, we need to figure out every income possibility, you know? Do I want to say, trust me, I'm on an agreement, a group here in Stowe talking about short-term rentals, and I'm pro ordinance and pro regulation. Just I'll go on the I'm literally writing an email to the select board right now, on my side notes. So I am pro that. Do I think that there is an opportunity and that I would be interested in it? I'd be dumb not to say it because I need to cash flow my building. It is not something that we've done. And it's not something I've fully put into building two because we just haven't even gotten that off the building, off the plot. Where short-term rentals fit in Richmond, I don't know how big or small the market is. But yeah, I mean, if that,
all right, that's just
that
something
doesn't-
for all of us to think about as
Totally.
one more. Chris, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Yeah,
See,
and
the
Joy,
first bigger
that is-
topic, Jim.
That's written into the density bonus units
I
couldn't
didn't see-
allow
Okay.
short-term rentals, just the
All right.
density bonus units. But anyway, that was just one way of thinking about it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Good.
So anybody else was a guest? Patty, do you want to have anything to say about any of this? I think you're the last standing participant from the public here.
What was Chris saying?
I was just agreeing. Nothing important.
Okay, we know you're about to make your motion to adjourn, which is going to be good. Patty, any last comments? She's staying muted.
Patty's
Maybe.
gone to bed.
Okay. All right. So great. Well, I think that was an extra, a productive 20 minutes. So
Yep, thanks for sticking around.
yes. So
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
okay.
Thank
Great.
you, everyone. Sorry if I was
Yes.
a little testy. I was very tired and not feeling great. So
Yes. Well, I hope you feel better, Josie.
you.
And
Right.
next meeting, I want to spend some time on the VRNs. So it'll be both. So anyway,
All right. Bye, everyone.
bye.
Right.
Thanks so
Have a
much.
second? If not, I'll officially second,
I
but
think Chris seconded it, and
Well,
if there's no
cool.
objections, then are there any objections to adjourning?
not at
No,
all.
good night, everyone.
Good night,
Good night.
everyone. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yep. See you next time.